My fondest memory of my dad is my fondest memories of my dad are talking to him every day and calling him for the joys in my life, the sadness sometimes, and just the stupidity too, everything. And he always was very positive. I would want everyone to know how positive and outgoing he was. He always wanted to do the right thing with the most positive outlook. We all have great fathers, I'm sure, but my dad was truly exceptional.
There's this one memory of him when I felt like I was in trouble and I was scared and everyone told me not to talk to him because he was under a lot of stress. But I mean, I was like, okay, I won't say anything to him. But of course, I told him about when I was in trouble. And I was like, Dad, I know you have a really busy job and I know you're so busy all the time. I don't want to stress you out. And he was like, what is it? And then I told him and I was like, sorry, Dad, never mind. It's okay. You're busy. And he was like, no. I was like, you're busy. You have a job. Never mind, never mind. And he was like, no, my job first and foremost is being your father. So tell me. And so he made me super comfortable. And then I told him and he saved me. I'm sure everyone knows him as a nice guy. He was a great guy, and that's who he was as a dad, too. He was a great father. Never left our side. So I hope everyone knows that. I'm sure everyone knows that.
I'm going to go back to when we were children, Maria and I, and these guys were just babies. And he would always put us to bed, tuck us in, and he would sing us lullabies, but they were special lullabies because they weren't, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Mary Had a Little Lamb. They were Chamorro rosary songs. So every night when he would put us to bed, he would tuck us in and start singing Matuna and the whole rosary song, which, by the way, I know all the rosary songs. Nestu Christu, see how we tell I would be like, Dad, how come you can't sing us all the cool songs? He thought he was a good singer. Yeah, he was. We told him that, but we would fall asleep to those songs every night because he would sing them to us, and so now when I hear them, they always remind me of him. One of the things I would want people to know about my dad, besides what my sister said, he is amazing, and nice, which everyone already knows, but he was always really, really stern about schoolwork. He always wanted us to excel, that's the word he always used, in our studies and read the chapters. And if it came to schoolwork, he always, like Tina said, his children were first, especially when it came to school. He always wanted us to do well in school, so.
There's a saying about the measure of a person is not when they are at the height of good times. It's how they are in times of crisis. Of being in a position where they're down. And that being said, it's those most recent recollections of Tony that really, again, are impressed on me what the greatness of this man was. When I went to visit him in the hospital, not a week before he passed on, I saw him there with his loving daughters, and of course they were joking around with him and with me. And of course, there was Tony with a big smile on his face, showing that there was no pain, and he was in there enjoying his kids, being with his kids, and also putting a good face for me, his boss. And the first thing his kids told me was, Governor, he finally took his laptop away. It turns out Tony had been corresponding with the the office staff at Department Administration, still trying to work through the budget. Well, the kids finally convinced him to take that laptop, take it away. But then he still had the iPhone, so he was still on that iPhone communicating with folks in the administration to get the job done. He was a true public servant. So we're going to miss him. God bless you, Tony, till we meet again.
I remember Tony Blaz as a young senator in the Guam legislature many, many years ago. And what's funny about him is over the years, it didn't seem to change. His personality was always very jovial, happy, easygoing. And if you had a problem with whether policy or a problem with getting a payment out of the Department of Administration, he was always receptive and he would answer the phone and always take care of the things that were needed. So one thing about Tony is he was always a statesman, but more importantly, he was always a nice guy.
Well, Tony and I met in freshman year at Father Duenas. And immediately what struck me was he was the only politician in the 9th grade that cared anything about Republicans or Democrats. And then, of course, he was full of energy, full of life. He was quite animated in everything he did. He was a great joker, and he could kasi with the best of them. But also, Tony, on the serious side, was fluent in Chamorro. He knew genealogy. He could tell you your family lineage, and he understood that. So culture also really stood out, that he was really immersed in that. But I knew that somewhere along the line, Tony had ambitions. He wanted an education. He wanted to go to Notre Dame like his father did. Tony was the superstar. He was the shining star and one of the up-and-coming directors of the Joseph Ada Frank Blaz administration. And of course, he went on to become a senator, elected public official.
Tony is a person that I looked at as a person that has this honesty in his character, always willing to help. And if you task him for something, he'll do it. You can depend on it. He is a very creative and innovative person. Let me tell you a story. Before Typhoon Omar occurred, Tony and I went up to Guam Memorial Hospital to check whether they're prepared for the typhoon. And upon arriving, we spoke to John Rosario, the administrator of the hospital, and asked him, "Are you prepared for the typhoon?" And John said, "No, our generator is down. Our radiator is leaking." And that was very concerning. And I looked at Tony and I said, "Tony, call up John Benavente of Guam Power Authority, and you two make sure this generator is running before the typhoon." A few days later, I called up Tony and I said, "Tony, how did you do it?" And Tony just laughed and said, "Governor, we did it the old-fashioned way. We borrowed 2 large fire trucks from the fire department, and they alternate pouring water into the leaking radiator until the power was back." I said, "Tony, that was brilliant." He was such a creative and innovative person. And yes, Tony, thank you very much for your loyalty and services to the people of Guam.
Tony was a person who lived his life with such great passion and purpose. And in remembering Tony and thinking about our many times together, our working together, our personal and professional relationship, what motivated him the most was actually his faith in God, his steadfast faith in God, and his unending love for his family. He was so comfortable in being a true public servant, serving others. And that's how I remember him. He was always a public servant. Tony is a leader who truly deserves a place in our minds and in our hearts. I know that he is in mine. And for that, I will surely miss him. I will miss my friend very much.
One of the things that I really loved about Antonio is his faith and his love for the people of Guam, and then also how focused he could be. He and I were the ones up at BAT once from Adelup, the fiscal policy team, and we took emergency line of credit documents to the Attorney General's office early in the evening. And while they were reviewing the documents, Tonio said, "Carlotta, let's pray. Let's pray for the people of Guam." And we did. He said, let's help the Attorney General see that we're right and that we're doing this for the people of Guam, and help the Attorney General to see everything our way. And I was so touched, and I wanted to share this with all of you.
I had always envisioned Tony later in life that when all the politics was done, that he'd probably go up to the university and work with Mark and be the island's genealogist. I remember one evening while we were waiting around in a break for session, he wanted to show me the pictorial collections that he had borrowed from the museum of Hagutnya and the different pictures that were taken pre-war and the photos of family that lived in Hagutnya and individual members that he had photos of. And he was so proud to pull those photos out, and for each picture that he had quite a number of boxes in his office, he had an individual story. And that's pretty remarkable when you consider how young Tony was back then. He was kind of a young man with an old soul in terms of his knowledge and his appreciation and his articulation of the Chamorro language.
I could spend hours, days talking about Tony, my experiences with him through the years. First time I met Tony was former Governor Paul Calvo at his campaign headquarters, and I said, "Who's that fanatic?" I mean, he was a fanatic Republican. And that was my first time I've ever met Antonio. And then we served 3 terms in the legislature, served under 3 governors, and I went on a trip with him. And all he could think of was shopping for his kids. But everything revolved around the family, and that's one thing I appreciated with Antonio. And, you know, he's taught me a lot, and forever in my life, I'll always remember him, not as only as a friend, but as a brother.
Tony was firstborn. He had a keen intellect. He, even as a child growing up, he was very proud of 2 things, of his family, both my side and his mother's side, and of his heritage as a Chamorro. But he somehow wanted to learn the language, and he did through his grandparents primarily. You know, his grandmother from his mother's side and my own mom. A student growing up, he always showed his interest in many things, and whatever he pursued, he excelled in, you know, and became Speaker of the Youth Congress and other, you know, like that. And he, you know, I guess even at Father Duenas, he catapulted to the top, you know, in a couple of years because he tried hard and he was good. But I also was very impressed by when he became a single parent and raised 4 children single-handedly, and he did very well, you know. And he was always very family-oriented and always very close to his children and to us. Being a first child, he was my wife's favorite. But he was a great kid and who did well, and I'm devastated by our loss, because he served me well and he was good to me. I miss him.
Half a day, I'm very grateful that the good Lord has given me 4 wonderful and beautiful children, Kimberly Ann, Maria Nicole, and Christina Bian, and my son, Awakin. And I continue to have the strength to wake up every day and do my public service responsibilities, and also take care of my kids as well. I want to honor my father because he is here today, my siblings, and all my friends. The whole mission for all of us is to help our people. The people of Guam. Don't just